Hi there. We're on day 63 of our Through the New Testament in 1 Year. Interesting subject today. We're dealing with the Transfiguration. And we're going to get into this a little bit too. Okay. And he said to them, "Truly I say to you, there are some standing here who will not taste death until they see the kingdom of God after it has come with power." Okay. That's a big statement. Okay. After 6 days, Jesus took with him Peter, James, and John, and led them up to the high mountains by themselves. And he was transfigured before them, and his clothes became radiant, intensely white, as no one on earth could bleach them. And there appeared with him Elijah and Moses. Okay, they represent the law and the prophets. And they were talking with Jesus. So, I'm going to jump over here. There's a site called gotquestions.org. It's a great site for questions, all things biblical. Okay, we're going to get into this a little bit. Okay, was Jesus' statement that some who are standing here will not taste death? And it's Luke, and it's also in Matthew and Mark 9:1, which we're at now. Is it incorrect? Luke 9:27 says, "I tell you that through some who are standing here will not taste death before they see the kingdom of God." See also Mark 91 for the parallel quotes. In each of the synoptic gospels, the next event immediately after this promise from Jesus is the transfiguration, right? Rather than interpreting Jesus' promise as referring to his coming to establish the kingdom on earth, the context indicates that Jesus was referring to the transfiguration. The Greek word translated kingdom can also be translated royal splendor, meaning that the three disciples standing there would see Christ as he really is, the King of heaven, which occurred in the transfiguration, right? Robes bleached white as no one on earth could bleach them, right? They probably radiated. Transfiguration refers to the event described in the above cited passages, which Jesus took Peter, James, and John to the top of the mountain, where he met with Moses and Elijah, representing the law and the prophets of the Old Testament, right? And spoke with them. The disciples saw Jesus in all his glory and splendor, talking with the glorified Moses and Elijah. This is a glimpse of what will occur in Jesus' kingdom. The disciples are dumbstruck at the sight and fell on their faces. Right? It seems most natural to interpret this promise in these verses, which we're at now, as a reference to the transfiguration, which some of the disciples would witness about a week later, exactly as Jesus predicted. In each gospel, the very next passage after this promise from Jesus is the transfiguration, which shows Jesus in all his glory, which will be seen again in the kingdom of God. The contextual links make it very likely that this is the proper interpretation, right? So, they seem to think he's talking about the transfiguration, which could be, okay? And they did see that. So, we're at verse 5, okay? Question I always had it is, they weren't allowed to paint likenesses of people, okay? That was Old Testament law. And how did they know it was Moses and Elijah? I don't know. They never tell you that. They recognized them because there were no portraits of them. They lived, a long time before Jesus, like 1,000 years, a long time, 400 or 500 years. How do you know? I don't know. But they did, right? Okay, verse 5. And Peter said to Jesus, "Rabbi, it is good that we are here. Let us make 3 tents, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah, for he did not know what to say, for they were terrified." And a cloud overshadowed them, and a voice came out of the cloud, "This is my beloved Son. Listen to him." Right? And suddenly, looking around, they no longer saw anyone with them but Jesus only. As they were coming down the mountain, he charged them to tell no one what they had seen until the Son of Man had risen from the dead. So they kept the matter to themselves, questioning what this rising from the dead might mean. And they asked him, "Why do the scribes say that first Elijah must come and he said to them, Elijah comes first to restore all things." And how is it written that the Son of Man, that he should suffer many things and be treated with contempt? But I tell you that Elijah has come, and they did to him whatever they pleased, as it is written of him. Mm-hmm. Now, it's a common belief that Elijah was John the Baptist, okay? He told them, if you want to believe that, you can, in other Gospels, right? So, Jesus heals a boy with an unclean spirit. And when they came to the disciples, they saw a great crowd around them, and the scribes arguing with them. And immediately all the crowd, when they saw him, were greatly amazed and ran up to him and greeted him. And he asked them, what are you arguing about with them? And someone from the crowd answered him, Teacher, I brought my son to you, for he has a spirit that makes him mute. And whenever it seizes him, it throws him down. And he foams and grinds his teeth and becomes rigid. So he asked your disciples to cast it out, and they were not able. And he answered them, O faithless generation, how long am I to be with you? How long am I to bear with you? Bring him to me. And they brought the boy to him, and when the spirit saw him, immediately it convulsed the boy and fell on the ground and rolled about, foaming at the mouth. And Jesus asked the father, how long has this been happening to him? And he said, from childhood. And it has often cast him into the fire and into water to destroy him. But if you can do anything, have compassion on us and help us. Jesus said, if you can, all things are possible for one who believes. Immediately the father of the child cried out and said, I believe, help my unbelief. And when Jesus saw the crowd came running together, he rebuked the unclean spirit, saying to it, you mute and deaf spirit, I command you, come out of him and never enter him again. And after crying out and convulsing him terribly, it came out, and the boy was like a corpse, so that most of them said, he's dead. But Jesus took him by the hand and lifted him up, and he arose. And when he entered the house, his disciples asked him privately, why could we not cast it out? And he said to them, this kind cannot be driven out by anything but prayer. Now some would say prayer and fasting, okay? And they don't all say that either. Okay? So, there you go. Will they explain that tomorrow? Let's see. Let's mark this complete. Go. No. So it deals with some of the other chapters deal a little more with that prayer and fasting bit. So, there you go. That's the first half of Mark 9. Lots of stuff. Transfiguration, right? And, either it was the transfiguration that Jesus was talking about, or some of these people are still alive today. What do you think? Okay, the Bible is truth. I believe it is absolute truth. And I think it was probably the transfiguration, okay, somewhere in or the translation, you could say you won't die until you see Jesus in heaven in all his splendor. It could have been translated to that. But let's see what the Geneva Bible says. It's a very old translation. The kingdom of God come with power. Okay, there's a note here. And they always cut them off so you can't read them. Okay. When he shall begin his kingdom through the preaching of the gospel, that is to say, after the resurrection. Okay, now this one says after the resurrection. Okay, what's 5? Okay, 2. After 6 days, Peter, James, and carried on to the mountain. The way alone and his shape was after 6 days. Garment did shine as very white as snow, so white no fuller can make upon the earth. Elijah and Moses. They were afraid. There was a cloud to shadow them. A voice came out of the cloud. Not much, huh? I mean, it's the first 9 verses. The heavenly glory of Christ, which could, within a short space, be abased upon the cross, it is avouched by visible signs, by the presence of talk of Elijah and Moses, and by the voice of the Father himself, before 3 of his disciples, which are witnesses against whom lieth no exception. Sparkle. They were beside themselves with fear. Lord, the point of this time for publishing the gospel. So, not a lot of insight on that, but there you have it. That's first part of Proverbs 9. Right? The Transfiguration. I mean, I choose to believe what it said over there in the Got Questions website that, he was talking about that. They did. 3 of his disciples did see Jesus in all his splendor. Okay? So, there you have it. We're just going to continue. This is day 63, so 302 days left, right? So, there you go. That's first half of 9. We'll finish 9 tomorrow. And lots of miracles and stuff happening now, okay? And you have to do study, where they couldn't cast the demon out, and Jesus just said, leave. And of course he left because Jesus is God, right? And they said, why couldn't we do it? And this guy can only come out by prayer and fasting. So, let me know if you want me to do a study on that particular verse, and we will. So, but until tomorrow, we'll keep going. Give us a like if you think about it. But see you next time.